So it's always something you go, oh, I should have done that.
Oh no! Okay, yeah, we're recording now. So the topics that I wanted to cover were the polls that I sent out at the roundtable meeting. They're still live if you want to add a contribution to them, and they will be for until next Wednesday. But I'll show you the counts so far, and maybe what we can draw from them. Will's offered to hold some tutorials at some point, so I guess I'll talk a little bit about that. And then I want to talk, I've prepared a couple of slides on what Git is, roughly how it works, and then some links to our own GitHub page. So I want to show you that, and if there's any time, then I'm going to be really brave and try and do a live demo of how to do something. But most times in talks where I see people do a live demo, normally something goes wrong. So we'll see. We'll see.
You've been doing pretty much live stuff since the beginning, so I think you're an all-rounder.
We'll give it a go. It could be live problem solving as well. Okay, let me share my desktop. Let's see what we got. Okay, so if you haven't seen it already, this is the MIB Python Club GitHub repository. In a minute, I'm going to outline exactly what a GitHub repository is, but on this landing page, I've got links to other pages of Python Club bits that we have. Essentially, it's a big shared drive for us all, and I've dumped a lot of Python Club stuff up there. And I also made these pie charts of the results so far from the polls. If you want to know how I did that, here's a link to the data itself and the notebook where I use PyPlot to generate the pie charts. They don't tell you the number of people that voted on each issue, which is a drawback, but I'll improve that at some point. Okay, so one of the quizzes was, what do we hope to gain from Python Club? And the majority said to learn Python. It's worth noting that the tutorials allowed multiple answers from each participant. So none of them are mutually exclusive. But a lot of people are here to learn Python and to do exercises and challenges. And so far, I haven't offered any exercises and challenges, so I plan on doing that in the near future. A decent chunk come here for the community, which is really nice. And there's some demand for use case examples of how we use Python, in our own work and so on. So that's something that's fairly easy to cater for. Lit reviews were less popular here, although when we switch over to the popular elements pie chart, paper presentation, which I think is the same as lit reviews, did receive some popularity. So I'm not gonna drop the idea of doing that straight away, but definitely the most popular elements are tutorials. Again, there's a fairly significant amount of overlap between these two charts. In terms of what day to do Python Club, we got pretty much equal votes so far on Tuesday and Friday. So for the meantime, I'm going to keep it as Friday because it suits me quite well. And if it's 50-50, then sure. My thinking is also that on the whole, at least even before lockdown, stuff would tend to not happen on Friday, which makes Friday a good day for doing stuff. So for now, I'll keep it at Friday at 12. And I've given this one a pretty terrible title, which I need to go back and do, but these were the topics that people wanted to learn within tutorials. So there's a lot of demand for machine learning and big data, which luckily are overlapping topics. So that's something that I'll be working on in the near future. Some demand for DNA analysis and design via, say, BioPython, and then a little bit of demand for cheminformatics and protein folding. I guess the protein folding and molecular dynamics for the people who already do it in the MIB, they already know how to do it. So I guess they already have their own place to do it. Anyway, so that's the gist of the poll so far. They're live till next Wednesday, and they're pinned in the Slack chat if you want to take a look at them and add a vote, add an option, etc. And I'll count them up again at some point in the future. So those are the polls. I also mentioned that Will Finnegan had offered to do a series of tutorials that he'd already given his group, the Turner Flitch group. So he said that he had taught an 8-week course of Python for biologists, which I've left a link to in the Slack chat in the minutes or the outcomes of the meeting post. Yeah, it's just here. So he's teaching an 8-session course based on this textbook, Python for Biologists. I think it's a textbook or a course or something like that. So the ball's in his court at the moment, but hopefully that will happen at some point, and hopefully we'll be able to round up enough people so that enough people are in one synchronized cohort as possible. And I'm waiting for information from him on whether or not he needs any help, support, etc. Yeah, we'll see. So that will happen at some point in the future. He also mentioned that it will be sensible to have this on a different day of the week to main Python club, which makes sense because it will be a whole session, or at least on a different slot to main Python club. So that is all I had to say about the polls and Will's offer for the tutorial. Before I continue, does anyone have any questions or pressing points about those two topics or anything related?
Oh, but I mean, if Will's able, then Tuesday sounds like a good day to do that. If people are quite happy between Tuesdays and Fridays.
That's a good point. Yeah, let me jot that down.
Obviously, it's going to depend mostly on him.
That's also
true. Do you
true.
think he's organising that independently, or is he going to organise that with you and then you come back? If you had a
I'm
chat
not sure. So I'm waiting for him on a reply to the message. I might have worded this one a bit funny, but basically I was trying to find out if he wanted any help, because he was talking about splitting everyone into small groups to work on problems together. And in a layout like that, it might be useful to have a couple of people going from group to group, giving them any help where they need. In which case, then he might need some extra resource. But yeah, the ball's in his court on that one, so we'll find out at some point in the future. Okay. So the other thing I wanted to talk about was Git. So I've prepared a couple of slides on Git. And Git, for context, is basically the underlying technology of GitHub and a lot of other version management tools. So let me zip through these slides. Okay, apologies in advance if it seems unpracticed. It is. Git is a distributed version control software that is free and open source and was invented in 2005 or created in 2005 by Linus Torvalds, who was the lead developer, or still is the lead developer on the Linux kernel. He created it because there was a demand for a collaboration system and version control system. With a large project like Linux, with multiple collaborators coming from everywhere, it becomes quite difficult quite quickly to track versions and coordinate everybody's work. Git, however, is a version tracking software that makes it seamless and frictionless to collaborate on a very large scale. So I put in an example of how we might do version control on a small scale. Say I'm working with Steve on a small project. We might have a few versions of a write-up. version 1, 2, and 3, and that's fine. But it starts to become problematic if we try and scale up to multiple users, and quite quickly our folders can become quite cluttered. So version control comes in around about here, and it has two main or key aspects that make it work. One is that you can branch each folder, each file, you can each anything. And by branching, I mean you make a copy, basically, for yourself to work on, independent of the original. So in this example, I make a branch of this write-up document, I make some changes, and then I come to the other key aspect of version control, which is merging the changes in the branches to the original document. So I can merge it back with the permissions of whoever owns the write-up doc, or I can merge it on a separate branch myself. I'm overcomplicating it, I'm sorry. Branching and merging are the key concepts of Git version control. So I've done a couple of drawings to try and illustrate what it might look like if we have multiple users working on a single project. So if we're working on a single project, it makes sense to host our project remotely. For example, on a remote folder. Dropbox would be an example of this. That's a remote folder. The difference in GitHub is that it allows having 1, 2, as many as you want branches. So user 1 and user 2 are both adding changes and synchronizing to a remote folder, which at the moment only has one development branch. Say we come out with an experimental branch. This happens pretty commonly in software, where you might have an alpha and a beta version of a particular software, and you want to do some A/B testing on it, for example. Or say I have my thesis in there, and it's going through multiple changes, and some of them are sort of leading on a divergent path. That's an example of a use case where you might have a branch. Well, anyway, in this example, our remote folder has an experimental branch where we're testing new features contributed by user 3. And we decide that whatever user 3 has contributed is really good, and we want to merge that into the main branch. We can do that fairly easily using a merge program. Sometimes this is referred to as a pulling changes into your own branch. I'm going to use those two terms fairly interchangeably, I think. So the merges are authorized by the owner, and from then now user 1 and user 2 can synchronize their own versions to the main versions with the updates. That's a simple use case of it. One of the advantages of Git is that it allows both the users and the remote folders to have as many branches as you want, unlimited branches. So in this case, we have a remote folder that has 3 different branches of the same software. So an alpha, a beta, and a something else. It makes it very easy for lots of users to use this at the same time. I should mention also that it's possible to restore any branch to any previous version of the software. So if anyone does anything catastrophic, then it's fairly easy to recover. Another key feature of Git is that it's decentralized. And by that, I mean every user has their own copy of the entire software or the entire project, which means that should they lose connection to the main folder for whatever reason, then they can still continue to do everything that they would have done otherwise, short of syncing with the remote folder. It also means that any one user can restore the remote folder should it go down for whatever reason. And it also means that the user can make as many experimental branches of anything that they want, which can be quite useful in a lot of cases. So Git was primarily, and still is primarily, used as a command line tool, although GUIs are available. I've linked up some GUIs down here. A lot of them are free and fairly easy to use, I hear. But if you choose to use it from the command line, then you can get away with knowing about 4 or 5 commands. So in these commands here, I use git clone to, I use git clone to make a clone of the Python Club repository. I type git branch here to show all of the various branches in our Python Club repository. Oliver Manner's patch 1 was where Ollie cleared up a spelling mistake in one of the documents as a test to practice doing a pull request. Echo my first commit into readme.md. That overwrites the readme file, and then the commit merges that change with the master branch, and then the push writes that to the remote folder. But please don't actually do this because it will overwrite the readme and send it back to the server. There's a very good ebook, Pro Gits, by Scott Shankon. I've left another set of links in the description for everything you could possibly want to know about Git. Which brings us on to GitHub, which is a free remote host for Git projects. It's not the only one, there are others. GitHub has been around for, actually I'm not sure how long it's been around for, but it's been bought by Microsoft in the last couple of years. So it's plenty financially supported, but in Git, it's free for anyone to make as many public or private repositories as they want, with as many public or private contributors as they want. So here's an example of what it might look like if you land on our Python Club GitHub page. You can see at the top we have a set of file systems, resources, tutorials, and so on. And you also will find this readme.md document, which is sort of the landing page that will render by default. So you can see I've got a few headings and some links to other bits in the Python Club repo. And if you want to add files without having to download any Git clients or Git itself, then you can do it entirely through the web interface by dragging and dropping files. There's an add files button somewhere. And if you want to clone the entire Git repository, then there's a clone or download button, which will let you just download a zip file of the whole thing. So it's fairly easy to use Git without having a Git program by doing it entirely through the web interface. That's perfectly feasible. Here's a little tree diagram that's a little bit linked up of the structure of the MIB Github. So far, the only repository in the MIB Github is Python Club, but it's new, so hopefully it will grow. Within Python Club, we have these 2 folders, resources and tutorials. Resources is a README full of links to resources that I think are useful. Tutorials contain a few Python notebooks, and another folder called PL Pro, which is where I'm slowly adding the machine learning notebooks on the Papillon-like protease machine learning task, except I'm putting a little bit more effort in to make sure that they're well explained and clean and so on. So it'll take a little bit of time before that's fully populated, but I expect I'll have my next upload done in a week. And of course, we have our landing README page that would land on as soon as we visit the site. I've put some links for some cool examples of GitHub pages. It's become fairly common in some of the sciences, not just computer science, but a lot of labs are hosting their data and their analysis on GitHubs to make it open and easy to review. So we have George Church, who's a very famous name in synthetic biology. This guy, Kevin Yang, who I think is quite interesting to follow. He does machine learning in protein engineering. Edinburgh Genome Foundry have a lot of cool stuff, definitely worth a look. They make a lot of Python tools for various DNA tasks. And if I'm not mistaken, I think Edinburgh Genome Foundry has a lot to do with Patrick Kai, doesn't it? maybe? Well, anyway. We also have the link for Neil Swainston, who used to be the Python Club organizer. The NHS Covid-19 app is also on GitHub, which means that anyone can review its code and look for, security issues and so on, which is quite good. The Linux kernel itself is on there. AI companies and source code for libraries that we use, like for example, pandas, are all hosted on GitHub. The advantage of hosting it openly is that every so often someone with time and skill will come and make some good contributions to your project. So that's the reason why open source software is quite successful these days, I suppose. And I've dumped a lot of links into this page as well for official Git, the book that I mentioned earlier, and a few guides to getting started. And it's taught by Linus Torvalds at Google in, I guess, the early 2010s. It's pretty funny. He's a character. He's a little bit sassy, I thought. Anyway, that's the last slide. Before I attempt to do any live demos, are there any questions surrounding any of these topics covered?
Where are these slides on GitHub?
No, I forgot to share them with you guys, so I'll do them now. I'll put them in the Slack. Today's slides. Okay, there you go.
Oh.
Yeah, sorry about that. I was forgetful.
Oh, that's okay. I'm on the GitHub page now. I thought, I'll just have a look at those.
Okay. Okay. Well, if you think of any questions, then let me know. I think what I'll do now is very quickly do a live demo of updating the GitHub repository, which is risky. So I need to switch to my terminal because that's where I choose to do my stuff. If you haven't seen a terminal before, this is my username, the machine, and this is the folder I'm in, documents/MIB Python Club. And this is the file structure of the MIB Python Club folder. I've got a folder in there called ignore, which doesn't make it onto the main GitHub page. So let's ignore everything within that. But here's the polls folder, resources folder, tutorials folder. Not showing the contents of it because that would fill up too much of the screen. Okay, so let's say I start up a Jupyter notebook, and what I want to do here is to update the data wrangling notebook. I don't know how many of you guys remember this one, or if you've seen this one, but it was an early notebook on how to use pandas and matplotlib for basic plotting. We downloaded some data on COVID-19, had a little examine, made one plot, and then made a plot of infection rates in the 10 worst affected countries. And the data only goes up to the 17th of May, so 5 days ago. But luckily, the URL that we get the data from updates every day. So all we need to do is to run the entire notebook to have it update that plot. So let's do that now. It was called Intro to Data Wrangling. Okay, and now no actual Python needed here. I'm just running every single cell using Control-Shift. And I'll delete that extra cell that I put in. Okay, so that didn't take very long, but we can see now the axis is updated to yesterday. And we can see that infections in the US are high, which is sad. I'll use Control F to save that, and I'll shut down my notebook. Okay, so now the changes are made to the file. I'm going to type command Git Status, one of the few commands that you actually need to know. But you can see that the Git program has kept track of the changes that have been made. So it can see that the intro to data wrangling files have actually been made and have been tracked. You can see here it also suggests me a command git commit-a, which means that I want to merge this with the main branch and skip the add step, which is a sort of safety step to make sure that you definitely want to do it before you do it. I'm also required to add a message with my commit, so it's automatically brought up the text editor Nano, which is a command line based text editor that is fairly basic, but it's fairly easy to use. So under all of these hash comments, I'm going to type my message, updated pandas notebook, and I'll save that. Now the last command for me to do is to git push, which pushes it to the remote folder. And when I say push, I mean it merges the changes in my branch with the version in the remote folder. I'm going to tell it which origin to go to. So my system, I've saved the MIB folder as origin MIB. And I also choose what branch to send it to. In this case, master for the master branch. But if I wanted to push that to a secondary branch, that would be fine. And that's it. That's all I need to do. So the two necessary commands there were git commit and git push. This git status was just something I used to show what was going on. Okay, now we can refresh this page and see if the updates have been applied. Hopefully it's instantaneous, but we never know. And you guys see that? It goes all the way up to 21 now, so it was a fairly instantaneous change. Anyway, so that's my live demo done. Are there any questions surrounding Git or GitHub or version control in general? That's okay.
Well, I mean, you're a big fan of the command line, but for those of us who are not so keen on the command line, there are lots of free GUIs out there for pretty much every platform under the sun, so you can get a visual view of what's going on. So I mean, because I use Bitbucket, I use SourceTree, which comes kind of free with Bitbucket. Okay. But Git Kraken and I don't know.
Yeah, I had a little look at Git Kraken. I'll show you. Sorry, Alex, didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, it's fine now. No, I just find sometimes I like to have a visual view of what's going on. So I tend to use GUIs. On Windows, I used to use Tortoise Git, I think it is, because I used to use Tortoise SVN Subversion, and that's quite nice. But, yeah, there's a stack of them. You can see those are quite good for showing the branching on there, so you can see where they.
Yeah, I think I tried downloading Git Kraken the other day to see how it goes. It's a very pretty interface, but there are a lot of buttons that ask you to upgrade to the full version, which, from what I can read, doesn't seem to be necessary for most of us. But there's the off chance that you might accidentally press the wrong button. Okay, so this is Git Kraken open. I haven't actually learned how to do this, but we have most of the commands that, well, some of the commands that we talked about. Pull is, okay. Well, pull is the command that you'd use to sync your version with the remote version. So if I were to do that, well, if it were to work, then this would have updated. with the version that I've just pushed to the notebook. So Git Kraken, I hear a lot of good things about. And in this link in the slides, there's a pretty comprehensive list of all the Git GUI clients, and importantly, information on whether or not it's free. And there's your Tortoise Git here, Alex.
Yeah, I've used Tortoise Git, Source Tree, Smart Git. Smart Git on Linux.
GitHub.
There's a GitHub one there as well, I believe. Top right.
Oh yeah, GitHub desktop.
So that's going to fit particularly well with GitHub.
Yeah.
Well, I think for some things, depending on what you're working on, a private repository is useful. So if you're developing some code to do something, and it's public, then someone can come along and fork that and use it. And it could be that you hadn't actually ironed out all the bugs in it, or and it actually does a calculation inappropriately or something. And as long as, I mean, in a way, you could put disclaimers on it saying, it's not finished yet. If you use it, well, it's your fault. But if it's private, then they can't use it. So it has an extra, not an extra level of security from the point of view of people stealing it, but an extra level of confidence that no one's going to use it inappropriately until you're ready for them to use it.
Okay.
Does GitHub add a default license for your repository, or do you have to create your own?
I've seen people create licenses in it, so from that I'd assume that you have to create your own, but maybe they have templates.
But no, Steve. But no. I think it will list some ones that you can choose from, but I don't know if it gives you as for a default. I mean, there are some ideas that if you're going to develop a package, then there's some sort of checklists that you should probably do. Things like making sure there's a README, adding your contributors, adding the license or the rights to use, and that sort of thing. So I think there's a checklist somewhere for things that you should think about before you make it public.
I found an article about that published by GitHub, so I'll add that to the links at the end of the talk.
I mean, one of the good things about GitHub and other, GitLab and others like that, are there's quite a lot of stuff there that might do almost what you want. And therefore, what you do is instead of just downloading the code, you can take a fork of the code so that you have your version of their code. And then if they change it, say if they find a bug and they can, or add a new feature, you can directly import their new feature into your version. So then you can tweak your version so it's more suitable for you. You can offer them the changes back if that's what their license requires, or that's what they would you want to do that. But you also get the benefit of their upkeep of the code. Anything that they change. So you might find that if you go on some of the other people's repositories here, you might see that there's quite a lot of repositories there that are actually not stuff that they've written. If you look on mine, it's not stuff I've written. It's stuff where I've taken what other people have done and then maybe just tweaked it a little bit. Even if it's just one line, that makes it easier for me to use it. And assuming as long as the license allows you to do that.
Yeah. My personal GitHub page is trash, so don't look at that. Just look at the Python.
Oh, I'm gonna look at that now.
It's just got so much unfinished stuff from a long time ago that I just sort of dumped up.
But I think they're all like that, aren't they?
Well, I'd feel better if they were. Hey-ho. Okay. So I guess from that we can conclude that Git is fantastic, and maybe we should use it more. If not for just Python Club stuff, then maybe our research in general. Cool. Does anyone have any plans for the weekend?